After 2 weeks on the road and 3 weeks total away from home, the West Virginia Mountaineers return to Milan Puskar Stadium to take on the Baylor Bears, another 5-4 football team. What is up? Welcome into episode number 16 of the Golden Blue Breakdown Show, where we break down the game against the Baylor Bears. I'm here with my co-host and partner, Jonathan Martin. Jonathan, how you doing?
Couz, I'm doing great, man. Here we are again. We've talked about it before. Good, bad, and ugly. And, hey, Big 12 championship game hope still alive, need I say. So, man, I'm excited for this week.
Same here, man. Same here. This has the making of a really, really good football game.
Yep.
Baylor is 0-6 in Morgantown. They have never won in Morgantown since West Virginia has entered the Big 12. Hopefully that streak does not end this week. Like you said, West Virginia is still, even though it's a long shot, they are technically still in the hunt if they can get some help and win out for a Big 12 championship game appearance. Baylor also has a lot to play for. They started the year off slow. They've now won 3 in a row. They're playing just like West Virginia. They're 1 win away from bowl eligibility. They're playing to help save Dave Aranda's job because he was on the hot seat coming into the year. So each team has a lot to play for. Baylor's coming off a bye, so they have a slight advantage there. So it'll be interesting to see if that helps them at all going into this game. As most of you know, for those of you who are not new here, you know we like to give a little bit of a recap of the previous week's game. And so we'll do that to start off with. Before we do, though, I've got to give a quick shout out to the channel sponsor here. So give us about 35, 40 seconds and we will be right back. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. All right. Thank you for being patient and letting us take care of the housekeeping there. Again, if you need a personal injury or medical malpractice attorney in West Virginia or Virginia, give Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner a call. They will take care of you. All right, Jonathan, let's go ahead and jump right in, man. And let's go ahead and I'm going to let you get started recapping the Cincinnati game.
Yeah, I mean, didn't see it coming. And by that, I don't mean West Virginia winning the football game. In fact, I actually predicted West Virginia, weirdly enough, to get that win. But did you have the West Virginia defense carrying the team to victory on your bingo card, Couz?
Not at all. Not at all, man.
I didn't. There were still some mistakes. There was a big play. But all told, I mean, we have to be honest, that defense probably won that football game for West Virginia. I mean, there were sacks, pick sixes, fumble recoveries, and a crucial scoop and score late in the game to seal it. It was just crazy that the defense actually stepped up. We talked last week how we were curious to see how West Virginia was going to respond with Jeff Coons now coming into the defensive coordinator role, replacing Jordan Leslie. And they looked really good. And they needed to look good because it was a day where the offense struggled. Special teams was good, but the offense struggled. Nico Markle didn't have his best stuff. It certainly wasn't the Arizona game that we saw out west the week before. So might be the first time this season where we said the West Virginia defense stepped up to lead the team to a win, but what a big win it was. And here we are again coming back home now. It's the first time they've been home in a while and have a chance to continue the run for the Big 12 championship game. So it was a good game. It was a good all-around game. Be interested to see how it goes this weekend.
Yeah, agreed, man. It was just really, really cool to see, I don't want to say complimentary football because it wasn't really complimentary, but it was good to see the defense, like you said, carry the offense for once. Because how many times have we seen this year where it's been the opposite? And I tell you what, man, I got to give a shout out, special teams, man.
Oh, yeah.
We cannot stress that enough. The special teams, Jeff Coons, shout out to him for his coordinator of the week in the Big 12, man.
Yep.
Neal Brown was coach of the week for the second week in a row. So
yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah. And, because we talked about it on this very show last week. The personnel is the personnel, right? But what do you get out of it? Is it a checkup from the neck up, as my dad used to tell me when I was growing up, that when somebody loses their job, you start really looking at yourself in the mirror. So we were curious, were you going to see more energy? Were you going to see a little bit more passion, a little bit more want to? But then were you also going to see some things different schematically? I think we both agree we saw a little bit more blitzing, saw a little bit different packages. We saw the corners on the edge come up a little bit more. So same personnel, but they looked a little bit different. Again, a blunder here or there, that's going to happen, especially in this league. But overall, I thought this defense and Jeff Coons really passed the test, and we'll get into this coming up.
Yep.
But don't look now. There's never a week off in the Big 12. So
that's right.
Baylor's going to test them.
That's right. Parity exists in this league like we expected it to, and it hasn't disappointed. So let's jump right into our the breakdown countdown, we call it. Or I just now made that up, honestly.
It's not bad.
So
it's not bad. That's pretty good.
We do call it that now.
It's pretty good.
So anyway, for those of you who are new here, we do 3 keys to victory. We do 2 position battles, and then we do 1 key player to watch for the Mountaineers. And then obviously at the end, we'll do our score prediction. But let's go ahead and kick it off with our 3 keys. Jonathan, what is your first key to this game for West Virginia to pull out a win?
Yeah, so my first one's going to be pretty simple, and it actually has nothing to do with offense, defense, special teams. It's something that Neal Brown talked about Monday in his press conference, and is that can we get back to some Mountaineer field, home field advantage? You said it in the opening. Baylor 0-6 in Morgantown. West Virginia has struggled this season, albeit against different level of competition. But West Virginia struggled at home. And Neal Brown took a little bit of heat earlier, a couple of weeks back, when he said, it's probably best that we go out on the road. Yeah. We even kind of criticized that a little bit, right? But they went to Arizona and they won. They went to Cincinnati and they won. So now West Virginia comes back home against a team that is rising right now. Baylor won 3 in a row, playing really good football. When I went back and looked, again, albeit against tougher competition, I'm not counting Albany in this, an FBS team. Everybody else, Penn State, they scored 12 points. Iowa State 16, Kansas State 18, because they've been outscored 135-78 at home this year.
Wow.
Now, again, I'm not trying to sound like a broken record here. That's pretty good competition, right?
True.
Penn State, Iowa State, and Kansas State, but 135-78 jumps out. So for me, I think for West Virginia, going on the road and getting 2 wins, coming back home against a surging Baylor Bears team that's going to score some points, they're going to be challenging. Can we put the advantage back in home field advantage? So be curious to see what the team does, but I think there's going to be a good crowd. They're back home. And I don't know what happens. Neal Brown talked about, is it distractions, good distractions? There's just so much going on. But they have got to protect home field this Saturday.
Agreed. That's a good one. One I didn't think of. And it will, I guess it's kind of lost its lure now after what happened with Iowa State and Kansas State. But, nighttime in Morgantown used to be special.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It will get dark before this game is over with. It'll be, obviously it starts at 4 p.m. Eastern, so it will be daylight when it starts, but it'll probably be dark by around halftime or so. And the last time that happened, it was a really tight game, and West Virginia pulled it out on a late field goal by Casey Legg, if you remember. So
yeah,
it got dark and things changed in Morgantown. It was really, sometimes that happens, but will that happen again? We'll see. But there's been a lot of really good games in this series. Been some upsets, been some, a few blowouts as well. But so the home field's a good one. My first key to victory, though, Jonathan, I'm going to pull a page out of your playbook, my man.
Oh, boy. I think I know where this is going.
I'm going to say field position, but it all comes back, a lot of it anyway, to special teams, right?
Yeah.
When you look, Baylor is really good on special teams. They are 4th in the country in kickoff return defense. Okay. They have the second, Jamal Bell, their kick returner, second in the Big 12 in kick return yards per game at 24.8, also has 1 touchdown. Josh Cameron, their punt returner, is first in the Big 12 in punt return yards per game at 20.7 with the 290 total yards. So they are very dangerous. We heard Coach Brown mention it in his presser. They are very dangerous in the return game. We watched them return 2 last year. I think it was Richard Reese last year, returned 2 kicks. They are very good on special teams. West Virginia has stepped up their game this year, and they are pretty good in their own right. They're 26th in the country in kickoff return in their own right. So, and I'm in an error there. Baylor's actually 4th in the country in kickoff return defense.
Yeah.
Not offense. So my apologies, but that just goes to show you they're not only good returning it, they're also good defending it.
Yeah.
Yes. And on the flip side, West Virginia is 26th in the country in kickoff return defense. So they're not bad at covering kicks either. And they did a really good job of it last week. So can they contain and do a good job containing the kick returner and punt returner in Jamal Bell and Josh Cameron? We will see. But to me, that's a very, very critical piece of this game. West Virginia had a 20-yard field position advantage last week in that win over Cincinnati. Yeah. A lot of that was because of the turnovers that they forced, but a lot of it was also because of the special teams played by the Mountaineers, and that was critical in that game. And to me, that's something that they really need to do again this week. They don't necessarily need to win it by 20 yards, but they need to win the field position battle this week.
Yeah, I completely agree. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to comment too much on that for those that know what's coming a little bit later on in the show. But you're right. Hey, listen, I said earlier that you could argue that the defense won the game last week. Again, kudos to you. You're right. The special teams field position. Preston Fox was unbelievable. Oliver Straw, whenever he had to pin, he was 40-some. I think he was 43 yards per punt. So he was big. And, West Virginia's been really good in special teams all season. And until we started diving into the Baylor Bears stats, you realize they're good too. And so, yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a battle. And again, I'll touch base on that a little bit later, but that's one you're going to want to pay close attention to because I think it could just be the difference.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So key number 2, what is it for you?
Yeah, so I think West Virginia's got to control the run game for Baylor because I want to throw some stats at you. They've been really good this year, but the last 3 games, they have been exceptional. Really good. Texas Tech, 255 yards on the ground, 343 against Oklahoma State, 257 against TCU, because that's 285 yards rushing per game the last 3 games. I'd say that's pretty good. And what stood out to me when I was looking over Baylor is they're not, when you see those type numbers, you almost kind of wonder if these are just kind of just quick backs that are just burning people away. They're just hitting a hole and gone. That's not necessarily the case. Their leading rusher, Bryson Washington, is 6 foot 203 pounds, and Dawson Pendergrass is 6 foot 218 pounds. And their quarterback, Sawyer Robertson, he can run too. He's 6'4", 220. So they don't have just one guy, they've got 2. And if you throw Robertson in there, the quarterback, they've got 3. If you're West Virginia, they're going to get thrown at a lot. The pass defense has been less than desirable. We know that. Right. So Baylor's going to throw the ball, and they're more than capable of doing that as well. But I'll be interested to see West Virginia, who has been pretty good this season, stopping the run. 285 yards rushing per game in their last 3 jumps out at you. Like, that's insane numbers.
Right.
So I'll be curious. Welcome to defensive coordinating, Jeff Coons. You get Baylor in their almost 300 rushing yards per game. So be curious to see how West Virginia controls that because it's a must.
Yeah. Just the last 3 games, you talked about the last 3 games, and this, you talked about the rushing yards. Their total yards per game the last 3 is 531. Baylor has flipped and become a completely different looking football team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But here, and I'm not trying to throw shade at Baylor or anything like that, because they are playing better football. But here is one thing I do want to point out. The competition level has not been the same, especially when you look at the run defense. The first 3 Big 12 games Baylor lost were against Utah, who's 5th in the league in run defense right now, giving up only 132 a game.
Yep.
It was against Colorado. They're not as good, but that game came down to a Hail Mary. Okay.
Yep.
And it was against Iowa State, who was a good team. So the 3 teams Baylor beat and ran the 3 teams you're talking about who they ran against were Oklahoma State, who's the worst in the league in run defense, TCU, who's 14th in run defense, and then Texas Tech, who is about middle of the pack. So that wasn't a bad feat right there. So the competition level to me does play a role in that. It'll be interesting to see. It's a good test for both teams. How good is West Virginia's run defense? Is it really as good as 4th in the Big 12, which is where they're ranked right now?
Yep.
And is Baylor's run offense, has it really improved that much, or was it the competition? So it'll be interesting to see. So I like that. I like that key there that you brought out. For me, the second key is, we'll get over to my notes here, but the second key to me, I'm flipping it a little bit, is can West Virginia have success in the passing game? Baylor is going to probably go all out and trying to stop West Virginia's run game, because they know that's what West Virginia likes to do. It's what they did last year for the most part. It's West Virginia's identity. They are a running football team, right? So that means whether it's Garrett Green, whether it's Nico, they have to step up and throw the football, especially down the field. If there's one weakness on this Baylor team, to me, it's their pass coverage.
Yeah.
We've talked about West Virginia's pass coverage. I've talked about their low pass coverage grades on the show by PFF. Baylor's not that much better. When you look at their PFF coverage grade, they are 14th in the league with a 57.3 coverage grade. So hopefully Hudson Clement will be back. We hope. He's probably, you could say, West Virginia's best receiver as far as getting separation from the DBs and getting open. Hopefully he'll be back, and hopefully Justin Robinson will get more looks in the pass game, because, him being big and long, they could really use that. And the young man just seems to make plays when the ball comes his way. But I would like to see West Virginia force Baylor to loosen the box up by making plays in the pass game. And I think that's going to be critical, because Baylor, in my opinion, is going to load the box and make West Virginia beat them through the air. And I think West Virginia does have the ability to do it, but will they do it is yet to be seen.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch on a little bit of that here in just a second. But to follow up on that, and a lot of it's going to be, what does West Virginia do at quarterback? Is Garrett healthy? If so, let's not forget last year at Baylor, Garrett had one of his best games of the season. Threw for over 200, ran for over 100, had 4 total touchdowns, led a drive right towards the end of the game. So, absolutely, if you're going to be able to attack them, because they're going to be planning for the run as well. So you're going to have to get Ray involved. You're going to have to get Cole Taylor involved. How healthy is Hudson Clement, who set out, if not all, a very good portion of the Cincinnati game with the hamstring. So, you're going to have to throw the football for sure.
Yep. All right, what's key number 3 for you?
Yeah, so kind of just springboarding into that. For me, it's offense efficiency. Say that 3 times in a row. Because we've seen Neal Brown pretty upset during his tenure here. I don't know that I've seen him as upset, crazy enough, as he was walking off the field at the offense Saturday after Cincinnati. He was disgusted with it. It was an ugly performance. It wasn't Nico's best game. It wasn't the running back's best game. It wasn't the offensive line's best game. I mean, they missed open receivers. They threw to receivers when they should have checked down. They checked
Didn't
down when
block
they
well
should have.
either.
They didn't block well. It was
Wyatt Milam didn't even have a good game. His PFF
Yeah.
grade was like 57 or 58 or something crazy like that. I mean, which
Yeah.
never happens.
Never happens. Never happens. He is. You can almost plug in a high grade for him before the game even starts. He's been that good. For whatever the reason, because it was just a weird game for the offense. But you know what? You could almost kind of trace that back to the second half against Arizona. We kind of saw a little bit of that. If you go back, especially late third quarter, fourth quarter against Arizona, you kind of saw some of that too. So for me, in a game that I think you're going to have to score a lot of points, I think Baylor's going to put up some points. And I think Baylor is susceptible to giving up points. And earlier I said, again, against better competition, 12 points, 16 points, 18 points at home. Because I'm just going to tell you right now, if you score 12 points, 16 points, or 18 points this weekend against Baylor, it's probably not going to look good. It's just not going to happen. So a little concern there after last week, concerned about the health of Garrett. And, hey, even if Garrett Green is healthy, what are we getting here? He's not played since the first half of Kansas State. That's been a while.
Yep.
So I've got a lot of questions about this offense, which we've said the defense so many times, it feels weird to say this. But offense efficiency, and can you get some, because you're going to need it.
Yep. You were talking about that. I was actually, when you mentioned how many, been needing a lot of points here, I started scrolling. I'm trying to find the over-under on the game, according to BetUS, is 60 points.
Yeah.
So
12, 16, 18. And again, I'm broken record here. I know I keep saying it. Baylor is not defense, is not Penn State. It's not Iowa State. It's not Kansas State. However, West Virginia also has some question marks too going into this game that maybe they didn't have in those other games. So does that cancel each other out? If so, you're going to have to score. You're going to have to score some points. And so, especially after last week, curious to see what happens with the offense.
Yep. Very, very good point. My third key, my second key was have success in the pass game, right? Because Baylor's going to force you to throw the football. So you've got to be successful at doing so, because I think they'll give you opportunities. And it's also a weak point on their team, the secondary. Well, I'm flipping it to the other side of the ball on this one. The secondary, which has been much maligned, does not need to give up big plays in the pass game.
Yeah.
When you look, I was looking at Sawyer Robertson's advanced stats. He has 17 touchdown passes this year. 8 of those 17 touchdown passes came on throws beyond 20 yards. All of them were outside the hashes. 4 on each side. Now, he does throw a lot more. Majority of his deep balls go to the left side, past 20 yards, right? He's only thrown a couple handfuls to the outside on the right, and about half of them went for touchdowns. So he's pretty efficient when throwing the ball deep down the sideline.
Yeah.
So West Virginia's corners, and if they play zone, their deep safeties are going to have to be on their game and be careful of those deep balls. Now, West Virginia typically likes to play that bend but don't break style defense. At least that's what they've been doing the last few weeks. They may force Baylor to dink and dunk a little bit and try to sustain long drives in hope to get turnovers and in hopes to, maybe force Baylor into some mistakes, whatever. But I think in this game that might be the way to go, because Baylor likes to big play you in the pass game, and West Virginia has been prone to doing that in earlier games this year. So they need to stop that and prevent that in this game, in my opinion, to have a chance to win. Keep everything in front of you. Don't get beat deep in the pass game. That's going to be critical for me. Yeah,
it's going to be critical, and they're going to have to put some pressure on him. He's big, but he doesn't like to run a ton. He can. But because of his size, most of that's, 2-3 yards falling forward for another 2 yards. So yeah, absolutely going to have to contain him. He's an interesting case. Sawyer Robinson is, but you're going to have to contain him. This is going to be a huge test for this defense. So again, last week against Cincinnati, and then even going back to Arizona, two good quarterbacks for both of those teams. So be curious what Couz draws up this week.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next segment, which is the two position battles.
Yeah, Couz, we've explained this every week, but we do not discuss these notes. So the irony here is what maybe is one of your keys to the game is one of my position battles, and that is that West Virginia secondary against Sawyer Robertson. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
I just said he's an interesting case for me. You know, he was at Mississippi State in 22 and really just didn't play much. We just kind of pulled these stats up here. He was 6 for 11, okay? Transferred to Baylor and was going to be kind of the guy there. He threw for 864 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. So what did Baylor do this offseason? They went out and got a quarterback.
Yeah.
They went and got DeQuan Finn from Toledo, I believe, and he was the guy.
Yep. So
much so that he beat Robertson and started the first 2 games of the season. Got hurt, and in comes Sawyer Robertson. What's he done since? I'm just going to there's so much of it, actually. I'm just going to have to kind of read it. He has the 6th highest QBR in the nation at 84.2. That's number 1 in the Big 12.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty good because he's thrown for over 1,700 yards this year, 17 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions.
Yep.
We said earlier that Garrett Green had a really good game last year against Baylor. Sawyer Robertson was pretty efficient too. He was 17 and 19 for 215 and a touchdown, which maybe goes to your point. Numbers are good, but West Virginia kept everything in front of them. So good on you. You did some homework there. I like it. Kept everything in front, but he was efficient. So he's an interesting case for me because his path traveled to here. It's like he was the guy, wasn't the guy. They brought in somebody else, so he wasn't the guy, and then all of a sudden he's the guy again. And what's he done with it? He's took advantage of the opportunity. So to your point, if you give him time just to kind of sit back and pick you apart, he's going to pick you apart. So another test for this secondary. So whether you want to call it the secondary, whether you want to call it the defensive line having to put pressure on it, I'll just call it the West Virginia defense. They're going to have to be active.
Yep.
They're going to have to come up with some schemes, maybe what they did last week against Cincinnati. A little bit more blitzes, come from different angles. But they can't give him all day to sit back and throw, that's for sure.
Yep. I like it. And, like you said, it goes to the whole defense. We always talk about the secondary, right? We've kind of beat them to death, poor fellas, but it's really a whole team effort. I mean, if you can get enough pressure, like like they did last week, when you get pressure, it can cause the quarterback to make mistakes. So if T.J. Jackson, Sean Martin, Fatorma Mulba, who had an excellent game last week, Trey Lathan, just the whole Tyron Bradley, if that whole front 7 can get pressure, it really helps that secondary out. But either way, like you said, it all comes down at the end of the day to the pass defense as a whole. So, all right. My first key position battle is West Virginia running backs versus Baylor's linebackers.
Yeah.
Baylor's linebackers are good.
Yes, they are.
And hopefully I'm not stealing any of your
thunder. Nope, you're not. Yeah, we're good here. We're good here.
But Matt Jones leads the team in tackles. He's second in the Big 12 in tackles right now. With I have it wrote down. He has, hold on, I've got it wrote down. He has, where is it? Maybe I didn't write it down. Anyway, he's second in the Big 12 in tackles. He also has a very, very high here it is. Second Big 12 with 82 tackles.
Yeah.
8.5. He also has 8.5 tackles for loss, which is good for 8th in the league, to go along with 3 sacks. His PFF grades, 77.2 in the run defense, 68.9 in tackling. So he's above average in both. So West Virginia running backs are going to have to, if they can get to that second level, they're going to have to either make him miss or try to run through tackles for him, which is not good. And then you look at the other linebacker. And by the way, there's more than one West Virginia connection in this game. One of them being Keaton Thomas, their other linebacker. I don't know how many know this. Keaton Thomas used to play for West Virginia. He was a walk-on for West Virginia. He left the program, went to either a JUCO or a smaller school. I don't remember. Went back, had a really good season, went back into the portal. Actually actually had considered going back to West Virginia again on scholarship this time, but instead chose Baylor. He's having a heck of a year. Has 75 tackles, 1 sack, and an interception. 77.1 run defense grade, 83.4 tackle grade. So he's an excellent tackler. And his coverage grade, get this, his coverage grade as a middle linebacker now, 73.9. So just a very good all-around player. I hate that West Virginia missed on him. I was really hoping they could get him. But they're really good at that middle linebacker spot. Both of those guys played majority of their snaps in the box. So West Virginia is going to have to either get creative on trying to figure out how to run away from these guys, or they're just going to have to win some one-on-ones. And CJ and Jaheim are going to have to win one-on-one battles against these linebackers. I'll be anxious to see how good they do, because last week they didn't do as good. Now, I shouldn't say that. Jaheim did. Jaheim had a great game. He just didn't get a lot of touches. Yeah. But CJ struggled last week for whatever reason.
He did.
So,
he did.
What they can do this week.
And another interesting stat about the defense for Baylor, because they've got 9 different guys who have recorded a sack this season. They've got 6 different guys who have got an interception. I mean, that's like the football version of spreading the ball. I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, 9 guys with a sack and 6 with interception. But it goes to the point of what we were talking about earlier, not just the running backs, which is a great point by you, because I completely agree. It's going to go back to some of the reasons why I'm curious to see what West Virginia does at quarterback. If it's Nico, your point becomes it's important on both. But if it's Nico, where he doesn't like to run as much as Garrett, it's even more to the point that they're going to have to win some battles there. And if it's Garrett, can you get out of that pocket and use a little bit of that speed? So, in studying the Baylor defense, they get it done. I'll tell you another one. Garmin Randolph inside, 6'8", 260 pounds, 3.5 sacks. Baylor has been known in the past for some big dudes, and that's a big dude. So, you're going to have to watch out for that defense. So curious, Jaheim and CJ are in for a test for sure.
Yep, agreed. So what is your second key position battle?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier. It's been a while since I've talked special teams, Couz, but so when you said it, I almost jumped through the monitor here. But it's what both teams do well. And we've talked throughout the season how maybe West Virginia's offense is really well going against another offense that's really well. Or this is special teams versus special teams, and I won't beat the numbers to death because you did a pretty good job with it. Baylor's pretty good. They have one walk-off win this year on a field goal. They've got a 100-yard return for a touchdown this year. Number 2 in the country in punt returns. And as you said, number 4 in kickoff return defense. Here's another one, number 5 in net punting. So what does West Virginia do pretty well? Special teams. Preston Fox could have been the MVP of the team last week. Over 100 yards in returns. He was really good. Oliver Straw did really well in punting. Michael Hayes has been consistent all season. In a game that I think could be, you said the U.S. was 60. If that's the case, it's not going to be split down the middle, but we're talking a 30-something game. This could come down to a field goal. It could come down to a late punt, trying to pin somebody deep. Last year against Baylor, it could come down to a kickoff that gets returned deep into territory. So I really believe that this game somewhere along the lines is going to be tied into special teams. and then one where both teams are pretty well at it. I'm curious to see which one performs best because both have been really good.
Yeah. I like it, man. I like it. We're on the same page on that one, aren't we? All right. We just used it at different parts of the show, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. Didn't even plan it.
All right. My key position battle is not really a position per se. It's coaching. I mentioned the West Virginia connection with Keaton Thomas. The one that everybody probably knows about is Jake Spavital, the offensive coordinator at Baylor, was obviously the offensive coordinator at West Virginia for a couple seasons under Dana Holgorsen. Before that, he had been a GA, I think, under Dana for a year or two. So he kind of cut his teeth a little bit at West Virginia. And little, I think some trivia here. It's my understanding he's actually married to a West Virginia alum. So I think his wife is a West Virginia girl. But anyway, that being said, Jeff Couz versus Jake Spavital. You've got a veteran play caller with some head coaching experience at Texas State in Jake Spavital versus a somewhat less, I'll say less seasoned. He has done it before, but he hasn't done it as much. Less seasoned play caller than Jeff Couz. Now, Couz was able to dial up some stuff last week that worked. Can he do that again? In my opinion, a much better offensive play caller than what they saw last week. No offense to Scott Satterfield.
Yeah.
But I think Jake Spavital is one of the best in the country. Just my opinion. Maybe I'm biased, but I think he's really good. And he obviously has that, we've talked about the offense. Last 3 games are averaging over 500 yards. They're rolling right now. He has them rolling. So what can Jeff Couz dial up as far as exotic pressures? Some of the stuff he did last week pre-snap, I think had Brendan Sorsby of Cincinnati a little confused. I think that's one of the reasons they forced some turnovers. I don't think he knew where to go with the football. Can they do something similar or even better maybe against Baylor and Jake Spavital's offense? I think it's going to be interesting to watch that chess match between those two and who comes out on top. But I think it's going to be critical that Jeff Couz calls a good game here and to try to overcome Spavital and his offensive play calling.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I like how you tied the seasoned experience versus the kind of on the fly, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you get the reins in a bye week and then you have to go play Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden your reward is again it's Baylor. So listen, we love Spav. I completely agree. I think he's one of the best offensive minds in the game. You know what? And credit to Baylor as a staff, right? I mean, Dave Aranda was kind of coaching for his job. And what did he do? He gave the offense to Jake, and he took over the defense as well. And here they are surging. I mean, they've the 3 in a row. So if we know anything about Spav, and if you've been around West Virginia, sorry, we call him Spav. We have for a long time. He's a genius when it comes to offensive performances and how to dial them up, even all the way down to the offensive line. And so, going to be curious. That's a really good battle between coaches. Really interested to see what he dials up. They like to run the football. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. But West Virginia's weakness is through the air. So be curious to see what he has for that.
Yeah, he even though he's an air raid guy, similar to him and Neal came up through the same tree. They're both under that Hal Mummy, Mike Leach air raid tree, right? They're both branches of that tree. But it's interesting. Almost all of those younger coaches who came up in that air raid system all now like to run the football. It's even Dana. Got to where he likes to run the football. So, by the way, side note, he's now the OC at Nebraska for the rest of the season.
That's right. That's right.
It now makes me want to watch Nebraska play. But anyway, because Dana's offenses are fun to watch. But that being said, I don't want to. This is not a Dana Holgorsen love fest, so I'll get off of that. Most people have probably already turned the show off. But anyway, he's not very popular in this neck of the woods. But and I'll totally lost where I was going. But nonetheless, it's going to be a good battle between Couz and Spavital. And it'll be interesting to watch. Oh, I was talking about their balance. He's very balanced in his run and pass. And I'll tell you something else he's balanced in is well, I don't want to give away my next segment, which is the top player to watch, so I'll save it. So go ahead and tell me your top player to watch for West Virginia.
Yeah, here's one you may not have seen coming. How about wide receiver Justin Robinson? Because he's been more involved week to week, almost to the point where you're kind of sitting back thinking, man, all this guy does is produce. Why is he not getting the football more? Why is he not on the field more? He had 2 catches for 60 yards. How's that for averages and a touchdown?
I think he only has, 17 catches on the year, something like that?
Yeah, it's not.
And 3 of them are touchdowns.
Yeah, it's not many. Like just produces. Yeah, had a big touchdown, and at Sports Center top 10 against Pitt earlier this year. Seems like all he does is catch touchdowns. This is big, 6'4", 220. So much so that Neal was asked Monday in a press conference is what are we going to do to see Justin Robinson a little bit more? And he talked about it's not necessarily what you do when the ball's coming at you, but what you do when it's not. Maybe it's practicing, maybe it's blocking. But in a game where I expect West Virginia to score, and in a game where I expect West Virginia to throw the football, Justin Robinson is somebody that's really interesting to me. And actually expect a huge performance. You can come back and get me if he gets like no catches or 1 catch for like 7 yards. There's questions about Hudson Clement and that hamstring. I don't know what you're going to get out of him, even if he does play. Is he 100%? Who's I'm calling it now? I think it's a huge Justin Robinson game this weekend.
Bringing that up, I don't have him as my player to watch, but I like it because, I think Neal coaches like to use different ways to motivate players, and I think he may have been using that question as a way, and I don't know that it was at the forefront of his mind. Hey, I'm going to answer. I'm sure he didn't have time to think. Hey, I'm going to use this to motivate Justin, but it can be used as motivation for players. Bob Huggins did it all the time when he was a basketball coach at West Virginia.
Yeah,
but maybe Justin Robinson takes that, and of course, I'm sure he already knew anyway why he wasn't getting as many snaps. But maybe he'll use that, and he'll use that question and that response, and he'll reflect and say, you know what, I've got to. And maybe hopefully he went out this week, had a great week of practice, did the things he's not been doing consistently, and maybe he'll see the field more. Because if he does, I'm with you. I think if he can get on the field more, I think he has the potential to be. I think he has the number 1 receiver potential.
Oh, absolutely. Averaging over 16 yards per catch.
And I said he had 17 catches. He actually only has 10.
Yeah.
3 of them are touchdowns.
Yeah.
Kind of takes you back. Remember George Campbell that was at West Virginia back
when from Florida State. Here? From Florida State. Yeah.
Almost every ball he caught was a long, a deep ball for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds you of that a little bit.
Yeah.
Here, but yeah,
he's physical. He's real physical. It's real physical. 215, 220. We saw on his catch last week against Cincinnati. He took the inside route and kind of got bodied up, took a late hit, still held on to the ball. I talked about that catch at Pitt in the corner. Just an acrobatic catch, got a hit, held on to the ball. Yeah, great point, Couz. It could be a situation where Neal wants him to take that next level, feels like he's about to take that next level, but is giving him that last, this is what I need out of you. When I look at this game, I see a lot of points, some questions with injuries. Once you start getting a little belief, and if it is Nico, you start to get a little bit of level of comfort. I think this has Justin Robinson written all over it. If not a 5, 6, 7 catch night, I think again you could see that one huge play. Be interested to see. I think it could be a big game for him.
Yep, I like it. My player to watch. I'm going a little bit different here. I hate to do this because it's kind of the easy way out, but I'm just going to say middle linebackers. But if I have to specify, I'm going to say Trey Lathan because it's my understanding. I think he normally plays. If you're in the back linebacker spot looking at the line, he's on the right side most of the time.
Yep.
When you look at Baylor, they do. I talked about earlier about the balance that Jake Spavital uses a lot. As far as run versus pass, he's also extremely balanced as far as where they run the ball. Like, do they run it off tackle to the right, off tackle to the left? But they seem to have most of their success, especially Bryson Washington, running up the middle to the left side of the center. He has 18 carries in that whole what I call the B gap. 18 carries, 146 yards, 8.1 yards per attempt with a touchdown. Very successful. That's running right at Trey Lathan.
Yep.
So Trey Lathan's now Josiah Trotter's going to have his share of action too, because like I said, they do like to balance it out and run to both sides, and they run, they'll run a lot of off tackle. They don't run as much around the end, but they will. But I think Trey Lathan, I just think he's going to need to have a big game in this one. And, Trey's also, between he and Josiah, he's probably the better of the two as far as rushing the passer.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, maybe they'll utilize him in that regard. So I think Trey Lathan, I'd like to see him have a good game this week, not only stopping the run, but also rushing the passer and helping to in that regard and kind of creating chaos for Sawyer Robertson, and maybe hopefully, matter of fact, he was a big piece of that last fumble. I think he was the one providing the pressure that caused that fumble at the end of the game against Cincinnati.
Yep.
Where Tyron Bradley scooped it up and ran it in for a touchdown. So maybe he can do something like that again this week.
Yeah. Well, like you said earlier, Washington 6 foot 203. You talk about a performance, Couz. His last outing against TCU, 26 carries, 196 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, and he caught 2 passes for 22 yards because why the heck not? So, going to need those linebackers for sure, because they can come at you in a couple different angles. And like you said, most of them going towards him by design from Spaff. So, going to need a big game out of him.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned his stats there. He's kind of if you look at his stat line, it kind of reminds you of what Jaheim White did a year ago. Yeah. He was one of the top running backs in the league, but probably had fewer carries than any other guys on the list. And that's kind of what Bryson Washington's doing this year when you look at his stat line. So it's very, very interesting to see those similarities there.
Yeah, and one thing Spavital does, I'll say real quick about Spavital. One thing he does, and I think that makes him such a good play caller, and you talk about his balance, he's not too hard-headed. So if the run game's working, he's not going to just say, you know what, I'm an air raid guy, I'm just going to start throwing the ball. He's going to ride the run game. If it's not working and he's throwing the ball, he's not too hard-headed in the sense of he's going to ride what works. And I think that's one reason why he's so effective. And in the last 3 games, they've ran the ball so well, they've just kept riding that train. So and that goes to the point we talked about earlier. Curious to see because they have ran the ball so well lately, and wanting to throw against West Virginia, what you see. But he's a really good play caller because he kind of just sticks with what works. Doesn't get in his own way. Yeah.
I'm just going to read real quick. Talk about balancing the run game. This is Bryson Washington and his carries. 10 to the left end, 10 off the left tackle, 10 left guard, 18 middle left, 19 middle right, 12 right guard, only 8 to the right tackle, and 10 around the right end. So he has at least 10 carries at almost every spot on that line except one, and he has 8 there.
Wow.
I mean, that's you have to have a lot of faith in your entire offensive line to have that kind of balance. And B, you're keeping the defense guessing when you do that. I mean, it's and when you look at Dawson Pendergrass, it ain't much different. 9, 8, 8, 12, 12, 5, 8, 2. He doesn't run near as much to the right side he doesn't run as much to the right side. He runs mostly to the left side, but it's still pretty darn balanced. Yeah. So, and both of those backs are dangerous. Pendergrass, he's had a good year too. He has 395 yards rushing in his own right, averaging 6.2 yards per attempt. So he can get the job done as well. He's just not as he's not as shifty. He's more of a power back type guy, I guess you could call him that. But he can do damage.
Yep, I agree.
All right, now let's get to the score predictions. I think you beat me on this last week. What you got?
Yeah, I beat you last week, but it's not been good. It was funny, Couz. We said on this very show last week, and I told you before I gave you my pick, I said every single metric I looked at says Cincinnati should win that game. Every single one of them. But I just had a feeling West Virginia was going to get it done. Crazy enough, the same thing kind of applies to me this week. Something's got to give. Baylor 0-6 in Morgantown, they're surging. West Virginia has not been great. It took a nail biter lost to Penn State, took a nail biter to come back against Kansas to win. Losses to Iowa State, losses to Kansas State. So I want to say I know what West Virginia is going to do at home, but I don't know. And when I look at this offense, Baylor does really well. When I look at this West Virginia defense, not as good. To me, this screams another home loss for West Virginia, but I just don't think it happens. I've got West Virginia 37, Baylor 34, because I do think special teams matters. And I think West Virginia is going to win a shootout and keep their Big 12 title hopes alive. 37-34.
Wow, I like it. I'm waffling on this one. I really don't like the matchups in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
But I also, when you look at Baylor and where their weaknesses are, I do think there are some things West Virginia can exploit. I do actually think, even though Garrett, I did a video on whether Garrett or Nico should start, and I said all things being equal, I'd start Garrett Green, and I still believe that. But man, when I look at Baylor and what their weaknesses are now that I've dug a little deeper into it, if Nico does have to start in this game, which I got a feeling he probably will. But, I mean, Garrett's been out 3 weeks. Even if he is back, he's going to be rusty. He's probably going to need a couple weeks of 4 weeks of practice before he's ready to go. I would imagine, and before he's feels comfortable again. Nico had a rough game last game, but one thing Nico can do is throw the deep ball.
Yep.
And I think that's a place they can exploit Baylor a little bit. And I'm with you a little bit, Jonathan. I'm actually going to join you in this. I'm probably jinxing the team. I'm probably jinxing it. I probably shouldn't even do this. But I'm with you, man. I got a feeling that West Virginia's going to pull this out. I don't really know. Like I said, I don't really know why. But other than what I just said, I mean, that's really the only area that I can see where they might be able to exploit Baylor is that. But I think it's going to come down to winning in the margins, special teams, maybe clean. I think West Virginia's defense can force another turnover or two in this game. And it's going to get dark at halftime. The crowd will probably be lively. It's going to be, I think the crowd will be into the game because the fans that are there at this game are going to be your loyal fans. It's going to be colder.
Yeah, good point.
There's some apathy within some of the fans. The ones that are at this game, more than likely, are going to be your fans that are going to be loud and proud and into the game. So I think the crowd noise will be a factor. I'm picking West Virginia as well. I think this game might fool us a little bit and be a little lower scoring because I think West Virginia may try to control the clock a little bit. So I'm going to go West Virginia 31, Baylor 28.
Okay. So we both go with 3-point difference.
Correct.
Spread
on the games too, I think last I checked. So I think it's going to be around a field goal difference either way.
I think I looked this morning. I think actually Baylor is a 2.5.
Yep.
Point favorite, which I think that'll probably change a little bit, tighten up just a hair. Not that it can get much tighter there, but just to prove that you and I can coexist politely on the show, we don't have to always agree. I wrote an article as to why I thought Nico should be the starter. And so when I look at this game, it's not a knock on Garrett. It's just that I think you have to be, if offensive efficiency is my most biggest concern, West Virginia hasn't had Garrett Green in a football game since the first half of Kansas State. And what have they done since then? Even though it wasn't a great performance, you had Nico in the second half. Then they went had a bye week. Then they went to Arizona with Nico, won. Then they went to Cincinnati, albeit not his best performance, but they won. I think there's something to be said about maybe riding the hot hand.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense.
And there's some differences in these guys, right? Difference in their style. One's a little bit more of a runner. One's a little bit more of a thrower. One's right-handed. One's left-handed. So what had to happen when you went to Nico? And let's kind of flip that around. I don't know that this team is ready to flip it back. And listen, we love Garrett. Love him. I just don't know if West Virginia hadn't went on a road and won 2 in a row, I'd say it's a no-brainer. you put Garrett in the game. I just kind of feel like you have to ride the hot hand, even though it wasn't his best performance. Listen, we're going to put a lot of that on Nico, but it was just a bad offensive performance.
Yeah, he didn't get any help.
He didn't get any help. He didn't get any help, and so he's going to take the bulk of that. And I get it, but it wasn't all on him. But I feel now if you count the bye week, Couz, you're 3 weeks with Nico under center with first team. I just don't know, after winning a couple and kind of inching yourself back up, you've got bowl eligibility on the line. You're back at home, and my goodness gracious, if you can't afford anything, it's coming back home and having a bad performance.
Yeah,
I feel like Nico might be the guy. And then if he doesn't play well, what better spark to come in than Garrett, right? But I feel like maybe that would be the play if I were coaching. But again, all metrics for me say this is a Baylor win. But I just somehow feel like West Virginia finds just enough to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. I'm with you, man. I just, for whatever reason, I think there's something about Jeff Couz I like, man. I feel like the players respond to him. I feel like his voice is a good voice to have in the room, in that defensive room. And I feel like the guys are going – I'm not saying they didn't like Jordan Leslie, but I don't know. I feel like he's a better motivator. I feel like he does a better job of getting the guys in the right positions. He's getting the calls in quicker so that they know what to do. I mean, my gosh, that's the base number one thing you got to do. They weren't even doing that well. They did it well last week. So it's simple. He's doing the simple things right. And I think that is what they were missing. And I mean, they even covered well last week. I mean, you look at their PFF coverage grades, some of their highest graded defensive players last week were corners and safeties. So I like that. I like it. And I don't know. I think they're onto something. I think Neal pulled the trigger at exactly the right time on that defensive move. Yeah. And we might look back on this a year from now, Jonathan, and that might be the move that saved Neal's job and boosted this football program. You never know. Yeah. I know people are going to yell at me for saying I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, or I'm just stating facts here based on what I saw on the field and what West Virginia still has in front of them. I'm not going to sit here and, pump sunshine and tell you they're the best team in the Big 12 right now or nothing like that. But when you look at the way they played last week versus how they played in the past on defense, there were drastic differences, There
were drastic differences, and we opened the show talking about that had all the makings of Cincinnati just rolling it down and scoring, and then finding yourself down 14-0, 21-0, and then who knows? But they kept fighting. And so, I mean, that was a different West Virginia defense. Was there a couple bumps along the way? Sure. But sometimes all it takes is a fresh voice. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that maybe, even though it's one game, it seems like maybe a button was clicked there. But again, they're going to be tested this week. But I've kind of just thrown it in there a little bit, but because this team's still got a shot.
Yep.
I don't want to get ahead of myself.
It's a small shot, but it's a shot.
If you followed me on X or Twitter, I'm always famous for saying I don't want to get ahead of myself. But you get Baylor, then you get UCF. Now all of a sudden you got something that's brewing, and you're going down to Texas Tech playing with house money. Who knows? Who knows? It could all be for naught. But would you have thought we were going to be here when we had this show after Kansas State?
Not really.
And so, you know what? As much as we dish it out, I think one thing about you and I'll pat ourselves on the back here if that's allowed.
Of course it is.
Man, we've always been critical when it's needed, or we felt like it's needed. We've never been personal. But guess what? Anytime that somebody needed some kudos and said, job well done, we've done that as well. And, so at times whenever the team or the coaches needed to be criticized, I think we've been fair in our criticism. But we can also sit here going into this game and say, you know what? Give them credit. I think Neal's turned the team around a little bit. I think he made a move in the bye week when it was needed. I think it's given a little bit of energy. And I think they went on a road and won 2 games And so here they are with something to prove with Baylor at home. And actually, I think it's a perfect thing that Baylor's surging right now because, that win looks even better if you can get it than it
Very
did
true.
4 weeks ago.
And it's an easier way to motivate your guys, too.
It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. So really encouraged going into this week. And so but be excited to see them and hopefully they can pull out a win, get bowl eligible, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we mentioned it in passing, but we haven't really focused on it. I want to get do you think the fact Baylor had a bye week and West Virginia didn't is going to play a role here at all?
You know what? Crazy enough, Couz, I think it helps West Virginia.
Really?
I do. And I'll tell you why. If I've won 3 straight games, the last thing I want to do is head a bye week. I want to get right back out on the field. And for that same very reason, if I'm West Virginia and I've won 2 in a row, I want to get right out on the field. I want to keep going. Not to get too crazy with my sports analogies, but I'm a golfer. If I'm playing well and I hit the front 9 and all of a sudden I got to stop, that kind of hurts me a little bit. I want to keep going. I'm in a little bit of a rhythm. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. So if I'm Baylor and I've won 3 straight, I don't want to hit the pause button. So not only did you hit the pause button, you're going on the road. So weirdly enough, and I think there's a lot of I'll even say this. I don't know that there's an argument to be made either way.
Yeah.
But for me, if I've won 3 in a row, if I'm Baylor, if I'm West Virginia and I've won 2 in a row, I want to get right back out on the field.
I know Neal mentioned it. Matter of fact, UCF is going to be on a bye this week before they play us next week. So it's happening 2 times in a row. Neal was not happy about that, and he mentioned it earlier in the year in a press conference. But
hey, but I would even say West Virginia, for the flip side of that is, if I'm losing games, right? I mean, if I'm West Virginia, I love the fact that I had a bye week after an Iowa State loss and a Kansas State loss. So that was the perfect time to hit the pause button. So for me, if you're winning, I just want to keep going. I don't want a bye week. If I'm losing, I think I need to hit that pause and get refreshed. But no, actually, I think it kind of favors West Virginia a little bit, in my opinion.
Interesting take. All right. I like it. All right. Listen, everybody, once again, don't forget to check us out on X. You can find Jonathan at Jonathan K. Martin. And you can find me at Couz 206. And by the way, for those listening, it's Jonathan, Jonathan K. Martin. You can also find the account for the show at GB Breakdown _ if you want to look us up over there. And as far as Jonathan's account goes, he does a lot of great stuff over there. He's putting articles up on his account. He has a subscription option where you can check out some of his behind the scenes stuff for his subscribers. He's got his own podcast called On My Martin Mind, right? Or On the Mind of Martin.
Yep.
Something like that.
On My Martin Mind. Yep.
So where he kind of gives I don't know if it's called a rant necessarily, but he just speaks his mind about West Virginia football, good or bad, or, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. So check out all of his work. He does a good job. I really enjoy working with him, and he's very well respected. I will say that too on the X, amongst the West Virginia X community. So anyway, Jonathan, any last parting words for the fine folks out there before we sign off?
I don't think so. Just, it's been a roller coaster of a season. There's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs, even if you go back to the week 1. And here we are finding ourselves late in the season, still with some energy, still with some passion, even though it's not always went the way maybe we've wanted it to go, but there's still a chance, and excited to see if this team can finish strong.
Awesome. I love it. Well, Jonathan, it's been another good show, brother. Look forward to doing it again next week. Everybody, be sure to check us out on X, communicate. And by the way, I always forget to say this, but if you're listening to this on the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating. That really helps the show out. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. Let's go Mountaineers and Q Country Roads.